I found my nephew's girlfriend's diary in our bathroom during Thanksgiving dinner. She had a section called Subject Analysis with my nephew's name at the top. And what I read in those pages made me realize she wasn't dating him. She was studying him. Look, I know reading someone's diary is wrong. I get it. But when you accidentally find something like this and you see your own family member's name written like he's some kind of experiment, you can't just unsee that. Most people think they can spot a fake person from a mile away. But what I discovered that day showed me something way more disturbing. Some people don't just hide who they are. They actually plan it out. They take notes. And the scariest part? This girl was so good at it that our entire family thought she was perfect. I'm talking 0 red flags. Until I found that diary. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why I'm still checking over my shoulder. So let me back up and explain how we even got here. My nephew Jake is 26. He's a software engineer. Makes good money. Pretty quiet guy. The type who keeps to himself mostly. He's always been careful about who he dates because he got burned pretty bad a few years ago. Some girl used him for money and then ghosted him. So when he started talking about this new girlfriend named Claire back in September, we were all a little protective. You know how families get. The first time Jake brought Claire to a family dinner was in early October. And I'm not exaggerating when I say she seemed absolutely perfect. She was polite, but not fake polite. She asked questions about everyone. She remembered little details from conversations. My mom mentioned she likes gardening, and 2 weeks later, Claire showed up with some rare seeds she found online. That kind of thing. She was attentive in a way that felt genuine. She'd laugh at my dad's terrible jokes. She'd offer to help in the kitchen without being asked. She had this warm smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. My sister loved her. My parents loved her. Even my grandmother, who hates everyone Jake dates, said Claire was a keeper. And Jake? Man, I hadn't seen him this happy in years. He was always showing us pictures of them together, taking her to nice restaurants, talking about future plans. It all moved pretty fast. But nobody was worried because Claire seemed so right. You know what I mean? Like she just fit into our family perfectly. But here's the thing about perfect, really perfect. When something seems too good to be true, there's usually a reason. And that reason was sitting in a purple leather journal hidden behind the decorative towels in our bathroom. Thanksgiving this year was at my house. I'm the one who usually hosts because I have the biggest dining room. Jake asked if he could bring Claire, and obviously we said yes. She'd been around for about 2 months at that point, and we all considered her part of the family already. She arrived wearing this cute sweater with a homemade pumpkin pie. Again, perfect. Dinner was great. Claire was helping me set the table, asking my mom for her stuffing recipe, playing with my kids. Everything was normal. Around the time we finished eating, I went to the bathroom to grab some extra hand towels because we had a full house. I keep the nice guest towels in the cabinet under the sink. So I'm digging around in there, moving stuff aside, and that's when I see it. A purple journal wedged behind the rolled-up towels. It wasn't mine. I knew that immediately because I don't journal, and this thing looked expensive, like real leather with a metal clasp. Now, here's where I probably should have just left it alone. But the thing is, it was in my bathroom, in my house, behind my towels. And I had this weird gut feeling. Have you ever had one of those moments where something just feels off? That was this. So I pulled it out and opened it to see whose it was. Maybe someone left it here by accident from a previous gathering or something. I opened to a random page in the middle, and the first thing I saw was my nephew's name. Jake, Week 6 Progress Report. That's what the page header said. Progress Report. Like he was a project. My stomach dropped immediately. But I kept reading because I needed to understand what I was looking at. The entry was dated about 3 weeks prior. It read like a scientist's notes. I'm talking bullet points, observations, little coded symbols in the margins. She had written things like, responds well to physical touch, especially when tired. Dislikes when I talk about ex-boyfriends. Avoid this topic. Mother's approval, very important. Maintain strong relationship with her. And favorite manipulation, playing slightly helpless with technology. Asks for his help. Makes him feel needed. That last one. Favorite manipulation. Those words were right there on the page, in her handwriting. My hands started shaking. This wasn't a diary where someone writes about their feelings or their day. This was a manual, a playbook. She was literally documenting the most effective ways to manipulate my nephew. I flipped to another page. Earlier entry. Week 2, First Family Dinner Analysis. She had written down everyone's names. My name was there. My mom, my dad, my sister, my grandmother. Next to each name, she'd written personality notes and what she called leverage points. Next to my mom's name, she wrote, loves gardening, mentions struggling with my own plants to bond. Next to my dad's name, she wrote, military background, show respect for authority, use titles. Next to my grandmother's name, she wrote, traditional values, present as domestic and family-oriented. Next to my name, she had written, protective of Jake, need to gain her trust early, appears to be family gatekeeper. Family gatekeeper. She'd identified me as the person she needed to win over most. And you know what? She'd done it. I'd completely fallen for it. We all had. I kept flipping through the pages. Some entries were shorter, just quick notes. Jake mentioned feeling lonely after work, opportunity to become his emotional outlet. Another one said, discovered he has trust issues from ex. Use this, be extremely consistent and reliable to bypass his defenses. She was literally identifying his vulnerabilities and then weaponizing them. But the part that made my blood run cold was near the beginning of the journal. The very first entry was dated late August, which was before she even met Jake. The entry said, new target selected, software engineer, good income, family-oriented, past relationship trauma, met through mutual friend, planted connection. Timeline, 6 months to full integration, 12 months to engagement, 18 months to marriage. Outcome goal, financial security and social stability. Target. She called him a target. She'd planned this entire thing before they even met. The mutual friend who introduced them? She'd planted that connection on purpose. This wasn't a girl who fell in love and wanted to make a good impression. This was someone running a long con. And the timeline? 6 months to full integration. We were at month 3. She was right on schedule. I stood in that bathroom, reading page after page. My heart was pounding. There were entries about their dates. Took him to the art museum, pretended to be interested in impressionist paintings. He seemed pleased to explain them to me. She didn't actually like art. She was pretending. There were entries about their intimate moments that I'm not going to get into because that's gross. But even those were written like clinical observations. Physical intimacy makes him more emotionally dependent. Increase frequency. One entry talked about his friends. Need to slowly isolate him from friend group. They ask too many questions. Strategy? Become his primary social outlet. Make him prefer time with me over them. And you know what? I'd noticed Jake hanging out with his buddies less lately. I thought it was just because he was in a new relationship. But she'd planned that. There was a whole section on finances. She'd documented how much money he made, what his rent was, how much he had in savings. There were notes like, need to wait until more financially intertwined before revealing any personal issues, and mentioning student loans now would be too early, save for month 8. She was strategically timing when to share things to maximize her control over the relationship. The most disturbing part was a page titled Emergency Protocols. It had a list of things to do if Jake got suspicious. Things like sudden vulnerability moment, share fake traumatic backstory to regain sympathy, and, if confronted with evidence, cry and claim you're keeping notes because you're afraid of messing up the relationship due to past trauma. And, last resort, disappear completely. He doesn't have any compromising information. She had an exit strategy. This was all calculated. I don't know how long I stood in that bathroom. It felt like hours, but it was probably only 10 minutes. I could hear everyone laughing in the dining room. I could hear Claire's voice. That sweet, perfect voice telling some story that was making everyone laugh. And I'm standing there holding evidence that she's a complete fraud, that everything about her is fake, that she's actively manipulating my nephew and our entire family as part of some calculated plan. I took pictures of the pages with my phone. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to take some of them twice. I made sure to get the page with the timeline, the page with our family notes, the pages with Jake's name as subject, and those emergency protocols. Then I put the journal back exactly where I found it, behind the towels. My mind was racing. What do I do with this? Do I tell Jake right now? Do I pull him aside? Do I confront Claire? Do I wait until after Thanksgiving? I decided to wait. I know that sounds crazy, but I needed time to think. If I confronted her in front of everyone, it would blow up the whole holiday. Plus, I wanted to be smart about this. She clearly was. I washed my hands, took a deep breath, and went back to the dining room. And I had to sit there, at that table, across from Claire, and pretend like everything was normal. She smiled at me, that same warm, genuine-looking smile, and I smiled back. But inside I felt sick. The rest of the night was torture. I watched her interact with everyone. And now that I knew what I knew, I could see it. Every move was calculated. When my dad told the story about his time in the military, she leaned forward with this look of respect and interest. But I knew from the journal that she'd written down "show respect for authority" next to his name. When my mom asked her about her job, Claire said she was figuring things out and in between positions right now. But she said it in this brave, I'm making the best of it kind of way. But in the journal she'd written, unemployed, need to present this as temporary choice rather than problem, gain sympathy. She caught me staring at her at one point. Our eyes met across the table, and she gave me this little smile and a wink like we were in on some secret together. And we were. Except she didn't know I knew the real secret. After dinner, I pulled my sister aside and told her we needed to talk. I showed her the pictures on my phone. She went white. She literally stood there with her hand over her mouth, reading through them, and she kept whispering, "Oh my God," over and over. We decided we needed to tell Jake tonight. There was no way we could let this continue, but we had to do it carefully. If we confronted Claire directly, she'd use those emergency protocols. She'd cry, she'd manipulate, she'd disappear. We needed Jake to see the truth himself. After everyone left except Jake and Claire, I told them I needed to talk to Jake alone for a minute. Claire got this look on her face. Just for a second, this flash of something cold in her eyes. But then she smiled and said, "Of course," and offered to help my husband clean up in the kitchen. The second he left the room, I showed Jake my phone. I didn't say anything at first. I just handed it to him and let him scroll through the pictures. His face went through about 5 different emotions: confusion, disbelief, shock, anger, and then this devastating kind of hurt. He kept saying, "What is this?" and "This can't be real," and "Where did you get this?" I told him everything. About finding the journal in the bathroom, about the pages I'd seen, about the timeline and the target language and the manipulation notes. He didn't want to believe it. He kept trying to find excuses. Maybe it's just her way of processing things. Or maybe she's just anxious about making a good impression. Or this could be taken out of context. But I made him read it carefully. The page where she called him a target. The page where she talked about his friend group needing to be isolated. The emergency protocols page. There was no context that made that okay. I told him the journal was still in the bathroom behind the towels. He got up immediately and went to check. I followed him. He pulled it out and just stood there staring at it. Then he opened it to a random page. It was an entry from 2 days before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving at his aunt's house. This is important. His family needs to see me as indispensable. Bring homemade pie, offer to help extensively, bond with the children, be affectionate with Jake, but not overly so. Maintain image of being humble and grateful. Aunt is still the key. Make sure she sees me as trustworthy. That's when it hit him. It was real. All of it. Jake's hands started shaking. He flipped through more pages. He was reading about himself from this outside clinical perspective. Every sweet thing she'd done, every meaningful conversation they'd had, it was all documented like a science experiment. She'd written down his insecurities, his triggers, his weaknesses, and exactly how to exploit them. There was a page where she documented a conversation they had about his ex-girlfriend and how betrayed he felt. At the bottom, she'd written, "Useful information. He has deep trust wounds. These can be used if he questions me. Remind him that I'm not like her." He started crying. Not like dramatic sobbing, but tears were just streaming down his face. Because this wasn't just a breakup. This was finding out that the last 3 months of his life were a lie. That someone he trusted, someone he was falling in love with, was actively running a con on him. That she'd targeted him specifically. That she'd planned it all. We went back to the living room. Claire was helping my husband load the dishwasher. She looked up when we walked in, and her smile faltered. She could tell something was wrong. Jake just held up the journal and said, "What is this?" I've never seen someone's face change so fast. That warm, sweet expression just dropped. For a split second, her face went completely blank, like a mask falling off. Then she recovered. The tears started immediately. "Oh my God, Jake, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Please, let me explain. She reached for him, and he stepped back. Don't touch me, he said. His voice was shaking. She tried the vulnerability play from her emergency protocols. She started talking about how she has anxiety, and she keeps notes to help her remember things because she's so afraid of messing up relationships. She said she knows it looks weird, but it's just her way of coping with her fear of abandonment from past trauma. She was hitting every point from that emergency protocol page. Crying, claiming trauma, making it seem like the journal was actually evidence of how much she cared. But Jake had read those emergency protocols. He knew this was the script. So when she said, "I'm just afraid of losing you," he said, "That's line 3 from your emergency protocols page." Her face went white. She tried to recover again, tried to say she didn't know what he was talking about. But my sister had pulled up the pictures on her phone. We had evidence. That's when Claire stopped pretending. The tears stopped. Her voice changed, got harder. She said, "You went through my private things," like she was the victim, like we were the ones in the wrong. I told her she left her private things in my bathroom in my house. And when I found my nephew's name written down like he was a science experiment, yeah, I read it. She turned to Jake and said, "Are you really going to let your family ruin what we have over this? They're clearly jealous. Your aunt never liked me." Again, pulling from the playbook, creating division. But Jake wasn't having it. He asked her directly, "Did you target me? Did you plan this whole thing?" She didn't answer right away. She was calculating. You could see her brain working, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she said, "I wanted a stable life. Is that a crime? You have a good job. You're a good person. I thought we could have a future." She said it like it was reasonable, like treating a relationship as a strategic operation was just being practical. Jake asked her if anything was real, any of it. She shrugged, actually shrugged, and said, "Feelings develop over time. I was planning to actually fall in love with you eventually." Was planning to, eventually, like it was a goal on a checklist. Jake told her to leave. She tried a few more times to manipulate the situation. She went back to crying, then to anger, then to bargaining. She told Jake he was making a mistake, that he'd never find someone who understood him like she did, that he was throwing away something real. When that didn't work, she tried threatening, said she could make things difficult for him, that she knew things about him. But the journal had shown us that she didn't actually have any real dirt on him. Her last resort was to disappear. And that's eventually what she did. She grabbed her purse, took one last look at all of us, and said, "You have no idea what you just lost." Then she left. After she was gone, we all just sat there in silence. The house felt different, like we'd all been living in some fake reality, and now we were back in the real world, and it was darker than we remembered. Jake kept reading through the journal. He read every page, every note about himself, about us, about the relationship. He was searching for anything real, any sign that some part of it had been genuine. But there wasn't anything. It was all strategy. The next few days were rough for Jake. He went through that journal repeatedly. He found entries that hurt more each time. There was one where she'd written about their first "I love you." Jake had said it after about 6 weeks. He'd written her this whole sweet message about how he didn't want to rush things, but he couldn't help his feelings. In the journal, she'd written, Subject expressed strong emotional attachment at week 6, earlier than projected timeline, highly favorable for plan progression. Did not reciprocate immediately to avoid appearing insincere. Waited 24 hours, then reciprocated through text message with emotional language. Attachment solidified. She'd waited to say "I love you" back not because she needed time to feel it, but because saying it too quickly would blow her cover. Even that, the most intimate moment they'd shared, was calculated. Jake found another entry about meeting his friends. They'd all told him afterward that they really liked her, that she was great. But in the journal, she'd written notes on each of them. Kyle, suspicious as new people, won over by discussing sports and beer preferences. And Marcus asks too many questions, need to limit interactions with him. She'd profiled his friends like they were obstacles to be managed. There was an entry about their first trip together. They'd gone to the mountains for a weekend. Jake had thought it was this magical, romantic experience. She'd written, "Weekend trip successful. Increased intimacy and dependency as planned. He is now comfortable discussing future plans. Next phase, begin discussing cohabitation." Every memory he had was tainted. Every sweet moment, every laugh, every conversation. All of it was in that journal, broken down into strategy and progress reports. It wasn't just that she'd lied. It's that she'd manufactured an entire relationship from nothing. She built a person that didn't exist, a version of herself that was perfectly designed to trap him. But here's what really got to me in the days after. I couldn't stop thinking about how good she'd been at it. This wasn't some amateur scam. This was sophisticated. The journal went back years. She'd done this before. There were references to previous subjects. One entry from way before she met Jake talked about mistakes from Project M and improvements in approach needed. Project M. She'd given her previous victims code names. I did some digging online. I'm not proud of this, but I looked up Claire's social media going back years. And you know what? Every couple of years, there was a different guy. Each relationship lasted about a year to 18 months. Then, the guy would just be gone from her pictures, replaced by a new one. Same pattern every time. She'd present as this perfect girlfriend, get integrated into their life, and then disappear. I found one guy from 3 years ago, and I actually messaged him. I told him I needed to ask about Claire. He responded within an hour, said he dated her for 16 months, that she'd seemed perfect, that she'd slowly become the center of his life, that she'd learned everything about him. Then one day, she drained his bank account and vanished. He never saw her again. He filed a police report, but she'd been smart. Everything was technically legal. She'd had access to his accounts because they lived together. She'd manipulated him into adding her to his credit cards. Then she took everything and disappeared. He said it destroyed him. Not just the money, but the betrayal. The realization that nothing had been real. I asked him if she'd kept a journal. He said he didn't know, but there were times she'd write things down in a notebook and get weird about him seeing it. Said she told him it was private thoughts, and he respected that. It was the same notebook, the same purple leather journal. She'd probably used it on him too. Documented his weaknesses, his patterns, his vulnerabilities. I found another guy from 5 years ago. Same story. Perfect girlfriend. Got close to his family, learned everything about him, then vanished one day with his money and valuables. This guy said he tried to report her to the police, but she'd used a fake name. He never even knew her real name. I started to wonder if Claire was even her real name. Probably not. These weren't just bad relationships. This was a pattern. This was what she did. She found vulnerable guys, guys with money and good hearts, guys who wanted love and family. She studied them. She became whoever they needed her to be. She got everything she could from them, and then she disappeared. And she'd almost done it to Jake. If I hadn't found that journal, she would have. In the journal, she'd mentioned her withdrawal timeline was set for month 16. That's when she'd planned to take whatever she could and leave. She'd done it before. She was going to do it again. The thing that's haunted me the most about this whole situation isn't even what Claire did. It's how easy it was. She walked into our lives and we just accepted her. We wanted Jake to be happy so badly that we didn't ask questions. She was polite and sweet and she brought pie and she remembered our birthdays. That was enough. We gave her trust she didn't earn. We welcomed her into our family without ever really knowing her. And you know what's scary? I think about all the people in my life. My friends' new partners, people I work with, people I know casually. How many of them are real? How many are performing? Not to the extreme of Claire, obviously, but we all perform to some degree, right? We present versions of ourselves that we think people want to see. The difference is, most people are doing it unconsciously. They're not taking notes. They're not running experiments. But Claire showed me that there are people out there who do this consciously, who see relationships as transactions, who see people as targets. Jake's been in therapy since this happened. It's been about 3 weeks now. He says the hardest part isn't even the betrayal, it's the doubt. He doesn't trust his own judgment anymore. How do you date again after something like this? How do you trust that someone's feelings are real? He said every time he thinks about trying to meet someone new, he imagines them taking notes about him, writing down his weaknesses, planning their strategy. It's like Claire didn't just break his heart. She broke his ability to believe in connection. My sister asked me if I regret reading that journal. She asked if maybe we should have just stayed ignorant, let Jake be hacky even if it was fake. And I thought about that. I really did. Because Jake's been miserable since we found out. He lost someone he loved. Even if she wasn't real, his feelings were. The relationship might have been fake, but his experience of it wasn't. So in some ways, my discovery didn't save him from heartbreak. It just changed the kind of heartbreak he experienced. But here's what I think. Ignorance isn't the same as happiness. Jake might have been happy in that fake relationship, but it was borrowed time. Claire was going to leave. She was going to take his money and his trust and disappear. Better he found out at month 3 than month 16, when he's financially destroyed and even more emotionally invested. Better he knows now that there are people like this in the world. People who see kindness as weakness and love as a weapon. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how she got away with this for so long. Not just with Jake, but with all those other guys. And I think it's because we don't want to believe people like this exist. We want to believe that everyone is basically good, that people's actions reflect their intentions, that if someone is nice to you, it's because they like you, not because they're gathering data. Claire understood something that most of us don't. She understood that people are predictable, that if you pay attention, really pay attention, you can figure out exactly what someone wants and become that thing. She understood that everyone has insecurities and that those insecurities can be exploited. She understood that families want to believe the best about their loved ones' partners. She understood that men who've been hurt before are actually easier targets. Not harder, because they're so grateful when someone seems to accept them. She understood human psychology in this really dark, twisted way, and she used it. Reading through that journal, I kept thinking about how much effort she put into this. The planning, the note-taking, the constant observation and adjustment. It was like a full-time job. And for what? Money, sure. Financial security, definitely. But I think it was more than that. I think she got something else from it, too. Power, maybe. The thrill of the con. The satisfaction of knowing she could make people believe anything. That she could walk into a family and make them love her, knowing the whole time it was fake. There's this thing in psychology called the dark triad. It's 3 personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. People who score high in all 3 are really good at manipulation. They don't feel empathy the way most people do. They see relationships as gains to win. They're charming and charismatic, but it's all surface. There's nothing underneath. I think Claire is probably one of these people, because normal people can't do what she did. Normal people can't fake love for months, take detailed notes on how to manipulate someone better, and feel nothing about it. That requires a specific kind of broken. So what do you do with information like this? How do you move forward knowing that people like Claire exist? Jake asked me that. He said, "How am I supposed to trust anyone now?" And I didn't have a good answer, because the truth is, you can't know for sure. You can't read minds. You can't see someone's true intentions. All you can do is pay attention. Look for patterns. Trust your gut when something feels off. And don't ignore red flags just because you want something to work out. The red flags were there with Claire. They were small, but they were there. She moved fast. She was almost too perfect. She didn't really talk about her past. She didn't have close friends. She was always available, always accommodating. At the time, we thought these were good things. She's committed, she's low drama, she's flexible. But looking back, these were warnings. People with real lives have complications. They have friends who demand their time. They have pasts they talk about. They have opinions and preferences. Claire didn't have any of that because she wasn't a real person. She was a character she'd created. I've told this story to a few close friends, and every single one of them has said some version of, "Oh my God, I dated someone like that," or "That reminds me of my ex," or "My brother's wife is kind of like this." Not to the same extreme, usually, but that pattern of calculated charm, of moving fast, of being whoever you need them to be. It's more common than we think. Most of these people aren't taking literal notes in a journal, but they're still manipulating. They're still performing. They're still seeing relationships as something to win rather than something to share. Jake's slowly getting better. He's learning to trust himself again. His therapist told him that the fact that he trusted Claire doesn't mean he's stupid or naive. It means he's capable of love. The problem wasn't his trust. The problem was her deception. You can't protect yourself from people like Claire by becoming suspicious and closed off, because then she wins anyway. She doesn't just steal your money or your time. She steals your ability to connect. The goal isn't to become paranoid. The goal is to become aware, to pay attention, to trust, but verify, to give people chances, but also to watch how they treat others, not just you, to notice patterns, to listen to your gut. It's been almost a month since Thanksgiving now. We haven't heard from Claire. She didn't try to contact Jake again, didn't try to apologize or explain further, or get her journal back. She just vanished, exactly like her emergency protocol said she would. Like she'd done with those other guys. I sometimes wonder where she is now. If she's already found a new target. If there's some other family out there welcoming her in, thinking she's perfect, not knowing she's documenting their weaknesses in a purple leather journal. I think about that journal a lot. We gave it to Jake and he kept it for a while. He said he needed to hold on to it, to have physical proof that it was real, that he wasn't crazy. But eventually he destroyed it, tore out every page and burned them in his fireplace. He said keeping it was like keeping a piece of her in his life, and he needed her completely gone. I get that, but part of me wishes we'd kept it. Not for Jake's sake, for evidence. But I did find it, and now Jake knows. And he's hurt, but he's free. He's not going to waste years of his life on someone who saw him as a target. He's not going to be another one of her victims. He got out early. And yeah, it hurts now. But it would have hurt so much worse if she'd had another year to dig her claws in deeper, to take more from him, to do more damage. The thing about people like Claire is they rely on our goodness. They rely on us being trusting and open and willing to see the best in people. They weaponize our desire to love and be loved. They turn our vulnerability into a tool they can use against us. And the worst part is we can't protect ourselves by becoming cold and suspicious. Because then we lose what makes us human. We lose our ability to connect genuinely. So we're stuck in this impossible position where we have to stay open and trusting, knowing that sometimes, rarely, but sometimes, that trust will be betrayed in the most calculated way possible. To show other people, to warn them, because I guarantee Claire has started a new journal by now, with someone else's name at the top, someone else labeled as a subject, someone else's family members listed with their leverage points. The bathroom where I found the journal looks the same as always. Guest towels folded neatly in the cabinet. But every time I go in there now, I think about what was hidden behind them. This little purple book full of lies and manipulation and cold, calculated strategy. It was just sitting there in my house. This bomb waiting to go off. And if I hadn't been looking for extra towels that day, I never would have found it. Claire would still be with Jake, still be coming to family dinners, still be taking notes, still be running her con. And eventually, when she'd gotten everything she wanted, she would have disappeared. Jake would have been destroyed, and we would have all been left wondering what happened to the perfect girl who seemed to love him so much. I don't have a perfect answer for how to navigate that. I don't think there is one. All I know is that finding that diary changed how I see people, not in a paranoid way, but in an aware way. I pay more attention now. I notice patterns. I trust my instincts. And I'm more careful about who I let into my life and my family's lives. Not because I think everyone is like Claire. Most people aren't. Most people are genuine and flawed and real. But because now I know that people like Claire exist, that perfect can be a red flag, that sometimes the sweetest smile hides the coldest heart, and that a purple leather journal tucked behind bathroom towels can contain the truth about someone that's more disturbing than any fiction you could imagine.